I'm Bill McWilliam, President of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service, providing insider news and knowledge to investors. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, it's great to be back, Jim.
Is anyone emerging as the front runner or front runners in the BC Liberal race?
Well, that's a interesting question. I don't think so, because really the race isn't going to really start getting a lot of attention, either by the media or I think by members of the party until after the new year is over and they get into the home stretch. So I think it's still open, and but I think one of the reasons why it's still open is because none of the candidates have really set the agenda or firmly established I guess I would say a ballot question. We in the federal Conservatives, the carbon tax became an issue, and so that became a lightning rod for some candidates. Then, of course, Maxime Bernier took a very clear and distinct policy point of view on a number of issues, and but it didn't get him over the top. So, but it did position him as a front runner. So, but we don't have that in the BC Liberal leadership convention, at least not that I've seen. And so we'll see if any of the candidates have the courage to break out of the pack. I sense that there's a lot of caution in that group, and they'll have either one of them will decide to break away from the pack. They'll come up with some new ideas, or it'll be a popularity contest of who can be the best at doing what they've been doing for the past number of years. So we'll see.
Well, when it comes to ideas, I think that's the important thing, because Christy Clark, in her last throne speech, basically just copied everything the NDP planned to do. Well,
I think that when I talk about doing what they have been doing for the last number of years, I don't mean that. I mean, the traditional way of, balancing rural and urban with different pro mining, but also with carbon tax and doing this kind of what had been an effective balancing act, urban rural policies, for the past number of years, but they took their eye off the ball on the urban side in the last election, and I still don't think the party's figured that out, how to get back on track in the Lower Mainland. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm hoping that at least one candidate. I have been supporting one candidate, Michael Lee. I'm not active in his campaign at this point, but we'll see if one of them are able to come out with some new ideas that that from my book side of the ledger anyways. I'm still waiting. And I think a lot of British Columbians are as well. We know that most of the candidates, if not all of them, support Site C, which is fine. But that decision's in the hands of the NDP. That decision will be long made. Before the next election, it will have come and gone. It'll be up to the BC Liberals to set the agenda as to why they should form the government instead of this NDP Green alliance. And so we'll be seeing. We'll have to see. Does the BC Liberal Party want to come up with something new, or are they going to run on essentially their last campaign platform, not the throne speech, but basically steady management, balanced budget. Personally, I don't think that's going to get them over the top, but that seems to be the approach right now that the crowd that are running for leadership are taking, but that could change. That could change in the new year, and I think you probably will see a bit more policy risk-taking by the candidates as they get closer to the election day.
Do you think the Liberals will give up playing the arrogance card where they refuse to show up for all candidates' meetings? Christy Clark basically telling a voter to piss off when she said, "I'm not going to vote for you." I guess you get that kind of arrogance when you've been in power for almost 2 decades.
Oh, look, I think you're going to get a different approach. Whether you get different policies or not, it'll be, is what I'm looking for, and I think the voters will be looking for that too. Now, there is a train of thought that, look, all the BC Liberals have to do is sit back and promise to be a competent government, because the NDP are going to mess it up so badly that the voters will be demanding change. But I think that is taking a lot for granted. That's a dangerous strategy, and so far John Horgan has not demonstrated any of those sorts of quirky NDP tendencies, to kind of blow it. But it's early. He's we'll see what his first budget is, and we'll see how he handles the Site C decision. But, so far, if I were the BC Liberals, I'd be running scared. I wouldn't be running in complacent complacency. I wouldn't be sitting, from a position of complacency. I'd be running a bit scared, but I don't sense that right now.
Yes, if you had to rate John Horgan's performance as premier right now, good and bad, how would you do it?
Well, I mean, it depends what you're looking at. If you're looking at politically, how's he performed politically? He's performed very well, and he's managing this Green Alliance superbly from the NDP's perspective. I think. I mean, I'm sure there's some people in the NDP who aren't happy, and I'm sure there's some people in the Greens that aren't happy, but they're in power, so at the end of the day, most of them are happy. But from policy perspective, well, that's a completely different grading system, and it's just. Aside from what some of the things David Eby is doing on the money laundering side of things, the NDP are doing what we'd expect. They're raising taxes, and so we'll see. We'll see what they do with their budget. See how they handle the housing file. But I guess from a policy perspective, they could be doing a lot worse, but they are raising taxes, and that's regrettable.
I'm surprised that the Premier rejected a proposal to have tours of Lionsgate Bridge. They do bridge tours all over the world, in London, in Sydney. And he said, we don't want to exploit our infrastructure. What's wrong with making some money from something that's already there? Well,
if it's a capacity issue, that may well be the case. It would really depend on the details, which I'm not familiar with. And on that issue, maybe I'll give them a benefit of the doubt. But we'll have to see. I mean, the real test for them will be, okay, they've raised taxes already. They're having a budget coming. I mean, they had a huge surplus. I don't know why they needed to raise taxes on anyone. What are they going to do next? And they've got. The U.S. is going to be cutting corporate taxes, so we're going to lose our competitive corporate tax advantage. Yes, we're still one of the better in Canada. Yes, we will still be competitive with the U.S., but we are not as competitive as we were. What are they going to do about that? And are they going to continue, their tendency to raise revenue? And that would be that's what I'm more concerned about than Not the only thing, but that is one of the major concerns I have. I mean, they've yet to really show that they're going to meddle a lot in the economy in terms of regulation, so that's good. But it's still early, and maybe they're just starting to load up their regulatory guns to hit us with red tape and more rules. But so far they haven't too much, so that's positive, and I would encourage them to hold their fire on that and just concentrate on a few priorities and not raise any more taxes. They've done enough already in their first few months.
What about this panic I'm hearing across the nation about legal pot on July 1st? It sounds like, Alberta is expecting riots in the street. Manitoba thinks our kids will be injecting marijuana into their veins in the schoolyards. Take a look at what's happened in Washington State. I think they've had legal pot now for 4 or 5 years. When I asked people there, Sol, were there riots in the street? Were children staggering out of schoolhouses with joints in their mouths? They said life was the same the day afterwards as it was before. The only difference was you won't get a criminal record for buying the pot that you were going to buy anyway.
Oh, look, the focus should be on the opioid crisis, and people, I think need to focus on that and also understand what it is. That it's not a bunch of Skid Row drug addicts overdosing on opioids. That this is leaking into the recreational drug scene. It's really bad, and it needs to be tackled. And that's what people should be demanding action on, because it could hit any family, well, not necessarily any family, but, it could hit any family that and the stories are starting to, pop up in every element of part of society. It's a huge crisis. It's a huge crisis in British Columbia. And, that's what needs the focus, the attention. If there's going to be any hysteria about anything, it should be on the opioid crisis and the pot decriminalization. It's a logistical issue more than anything for the provincial government. One could argue that it's going to distract them from doing other things like deal with the opioid crisis, but it's in terms of priorities, there's no question where the focus has to be.
Well, it doesn't help when you have conservative MPs like Peter Kent equating marijuana with fentanyl.
Well, the conservatives had a long chance to stop money laundering in British Columbia. It was a law and order issue which they ignored. They've had some good success on the tax front in Ottawa, opposing the government, and I give them credit for that. I give them credit for their holding the government accountable on the small business tax side. But, the opioid crisis, money laundering, that's a law and order issue. And that's something I would, I think that conservatives could do a better job on. They should be focusing on that. Yes, they should be focusing on the implementation of marijuana, legalization. But in terms of priorities, in terms of where lives are at stake, in terms of youth at risk, there's no comparison, Jim. There's absolutely no comparison where the risks are. What I worry most about my kids in Vancouver, is the opioid scene, in terms of where's that going to be in 10 or 15 years when they grow up. I hope that we get it under control now. It's a huge, huge problem. And, again, I'd really like to hear the BC Liberals talk about that more frankly, more openly, more creatively, and show that they can hold the NDP to account on how they're going to handle this issue, because you do need accountability, provincially and federally. And there is a link, between money laundering, drugs, and so let's see what David Eby is going to come up with over the next few months, and hopefully there'll be a multifaceted attack on the opioid crisis here, and part of that has to be a law and order side of it. And I would really hope that the BC Liberals get into that, but they've got to confront their money laundering past and their inaction on that. And I don't hear anyone in the BC Liberals really taking that up. It's like they're closing their eyes. It doesn't exist. It has existed, and they need to, at least one candidate needs to take a position on it. And, we'll see in the new year if any of them have the guts to either, applaud what David Eby's doing or criticize him in a constructive way on what he's doing, or whether they're just going to, oppose it because the NDP are bringing in something and everything the NDP does is bad. Well, not everything the NDP does is going to be bad. There are going to be some things that are going to require unanimous, effort on fighting, and the opioid crisis is one of them.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ted Dixon. Ted, should Prime Minister Trudeau fire Finance Minister Bill Morneau?
Well, I hope he doesn't. And, on this show, I've been as critical as anyone about Bill Morneau's performance on the small business side and Prime Minister's as well. I have not been impressed with what he's done on Canada Pension. I haven't been impressed with what Bill Morneau has done on renewing the Bank of Canada inflation target. So, I don't give this guy high marks. I mean, I do applaud what he's done on the housing side. He's had the courage to do something there. What they did with the child tax credit was on balance probably pretty good, and the middle class tax cuts was good. But the problem, if Bill Morneau goes, it sends a signal that politics is really just an area for professional politicians, that if you come from the private sector, you really, this isn't the place for you. And I think that would be a very bad signal. So I hope that Bill Morneau is able to stay in the job and to, serve out the mandate here. And, and that's despite, the policy things that I don't agree with him on. On balance, though, I think it would be a triumph of a bureaucratic purity, to have this guy booted out because of some bad advice he got from his bureaucrats, and also some bad political advice he was following, probably from the Prime Minister's office, in terms of spinning this middle class warfare nonsense. That was all stuff I would assume that he did under marching orders, and why should he be the victim of it? He didn't dream up this middle class warfare narrative that backfired in the summer. He went along with it. That was his mistake, but he's new. He's new to the political game, and he's going to make mistakes. And it'd be a shame to see him. Basically, it'd be the same. It would be a shame to see Bill Morneau go the same way we saw Nigel Wright go. Nigel Wright was the former chief of staff to Stephen Harper on the Duffy, who got mixed up in the Duffy Senate issue, and because there is a learning curve for people who come from the private sector into government, and there's this tendency, I think, for the established political class to be able to capitalize on people who are not not really part of the game, or are not playing the game, haven't played the game all their career, don't know all the little tricks, don't know exactly what is politically correct to do at any time, and we need all sorts of opinions and points of view in government, and that includes people from the private sector who may not be politically savvy. And and Bill Morneau hasn't been very politically savvy, but doesn't mean that he should be given the boot because he doesn't play the inside game like everyone else in Ottawa does.
Has Prime Minister Trudeau managed to fumble Canada's relations and trade opportunities with the three biggest economies on the planet? NAFTA talks with economy number one USA not going well. China, economy number two. Trudeau did not make a good impression when he was in China. Japan, The number 3 economy upset that Canada failed to sign the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Who are we going to trade with if we don't trade with the 3 biggest economies?
Well, I think the Trudeau government's had mixed success on trade. I mean, they did score a big one with Europe. I mean, the European Union, the trade deal, they got that across the finish line. So you got to give them credit for that. It was a tough one to do. They're a new government. I guess they were able to interact, more easily with the Europeans. I don't, maybe the situation was a little bit better, and dealing in Asia, hasn't been their strong suit. So, I'll give the Prime Minister credit for having, he admitted that they have to do a better job. And, at the end of the day, Jim, this isn't going to impact investors here in Canada immediately. In terms of those who are investing either in the real estate market or in the stock market. The status quo is still there. Nothing has changed. This isn't going to impact anything. Now, if there is in terms of what happened in China. Now, if NAFTA falls apart, I really don't think that will be the fault of the Trudeau government. There are things that the Americans are asking for that you just can't give into, and at some point you say, okay, Charlie, well, you want to play in your own sandbox. Now, it's too bad, I guess, that we don't have TPP at this point. It would strengthen our bargaining position with the Americans. I understand why we don't have TPP. There's at least, one element of the TPP that's probably not on balance in Canada's interest to sign on to right now. I think that can be fixed. I think it will be fixed in the new year. So I think we will get a TPP done. But a China deal is a long way off, and I'm glad the Trudeau government's, probably slowed down a bit. And I don't think, Canadians now are a little bit more receptive to doing a deal with China after the experience with the Americans on, softwood lumber again and NAFTA, but I don't think any Canadians in a big hurry, and Canadians in general are in a big hurry to rush into a trade deal with China, and so this the China trip's going to be forgotten pretty quickly, I think, but the NAFTA will be back on the front burner in the new year, that's for sure.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Ted Dixon. Ted, what are insiders doing on the markets right now?
Well, they're taking advantage of the weakness in the gold space. I'll tell you that. We have an indicator that tracks what insiders are doing across the market, and we break it down by key industry. And in terms of what's going on in the gold market, we've had insider buying in the gold area at multi-year highs. So while a lot of people are selling their gold stocks because they're either going into Bitcoin or they think the U.S. Rates are going up, it's going to make gold unattractive. I can tell you we're seeing a lot of insider buying. We're tracking it quite closely right now. It's one of our key insider themes that we're following into the new year. Basically, that we're lying in wait for inflation by exposure to mining stocks, and inflation pressures are building. We saw the inflation numbers in the Q3 GDP report in Canada pretty strong. Inflation expectations in the U.S. are moving up. What we see amongst insiders, we're seeing inflation expectations building. So Canada is going to be, I think, a pretty interesting place to invest in the new year. We're going through a little seasonal weakness here at the end of December. We saw it last year as well. we're following it very closly, and I can tell you that on Canadian Insider right now, we're putting out we put out a number of free reports today. We put a report up about Agrium. It's not an investment recommendation, but we've seen some insider buying after China approved the Agrium potash deals. So keep an eye on the agriculture space. And for those who want to follow insiders a lot more closely, we have this great membership drive on CanadianInsider.com. You can join our Canadian Insider Club for $99 on a yearly subscription. Normally $2.99. That sale is on until December 15th. It'll be gone, Jim, I think, just in time for your birthday. And on December 16th, it's going back to $2.99. So anyone who's interested in getting our daily newsletter or following our market themes, now is a great time to take advantage of that year-end sale. It's only on for another week or so, but and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. You don't like it, just ask us for your money back in 30 days, and we'll give it to you, no questions asked.
Ted, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.